The more you listen, the more you know. This is Good Politics with Dr. Wilson and Adam Whiteman.
So yeah, I mean we've got some time left, and I think that there was something really special you wanted to get into.
Right. So in the time that remains, what I want to do is put the icing on the cake. I want to talk a little bit about this thing called a Steele Dossier. People are going to hear about this, and so I want to go over this quickly. There's this thing called a Steele Dossier, and it was Oppo research that got funded by Democrats. The Hillary Clinton campaign hired the services of Fusion GPS around April of 2016. Keep the timeline straight. They hired a former British spy, Christopher Steele, who was subcontracted to get get opposition research on the Trump campaign. And basically out of this dossier came a set of facts, assertions, claims, which suggested that Trump was compromised in some way. And this is what helped launch the Mueller investigation. You'll notice this dossier was actually used to get a FISA warrant, which I believe occurred in July of 2016 before Trump is elected. And the question is, when Mueller investigated this, he really found no evidence of it. So a lot of what was put in this dossier that formed the basis of spying on the campaign, it's turned out to be kind of discredited. And the question is, what was that all about? There is a theory out there that suggested that Steele, the British agent, was fed a bunch of garbage purposely. This is a narrative out there that certain forces fed him, kind of like what we just said about Rudy. You know how we argued Rudy was fed garbage. The argument is that misinformation was fed to purposely, so this dossier and this narrative of Trump being kind of compromised could be created, which created a predicate to spy on it. And again, we're not saying anything bad here. We're not saying any of this is true. The only reason why I'm repeating this is that there's an investigation into this right now. There's two investigations going on, one by the Department of Justice and one by this other guy. I think his name is Durham. I think it's an IG investigation. But the point is there's two of them.
AG?
No, Inspector General.
Okay.
And so what you have is when you have a DOJ investigation going on, that's illegal. It's trying to prosecute someone. So you actually have an investigation into the investigation. The investigation is, why was this dossier created? Why was this whole narrative that Trump was compromised by Russians there in the first place?
Right.
And so,
and does it have any merit to it?
Right. And so to get through this, play clip number 80.
Can you state with confidence that the Steele dossier was not part of Russia's disinformation campaign?
No, as I said in my opening statement, that part of the building of the case predated me, and by at least 10 months.
Give me a 3-2.
3, 2, 1.
All right, so moving quickly through this, let's back this up now and play clip number 99, and then we'll discuss it.
CIA, the FBI, and the Director of National Intelligence, all working with Attorney General William Barr now to review the origins of the Russia investigation. This after Barr appointed U.S. Attorney John Durham to investigate possible surveillance abuses against the Trump campaign.
Wow. Okay. So first we have Mueller saying, I took it as truth because it happened 10 months before I even came into the investigation. So he did not check the merit to that, and he couldn't even say that he couldn't say with confidence that Russia was not involved in that pretext.
Well, yeah. Now keep this in mind. So Mueller is handed something, the predicate of which is this dossier, and his business is not to wonder where the dossier came from. His business is to motor forward and to see whether or not Trump is compromised by his Russian connections.
Right.
And Trump did have these connections with the business connections, with the oligarchs and so forth. And so he therefore investigates this and can find no evidence for such a thing. I mean, the lawyers would look at this and say that in volume 1 of the report that part of it was really helpful to Trump because it showed that basically the case was frivolous. There was evidentiary flaws in it, whether it would have lacked probable cause or subject to a directed verdict. So so because that didn't pan out, now what we're doing is taking a step backward and say, okay, so why did this start in the first place? Was it what was the probable cause? I just told you Trump had business connections with Russia. That's probably not good enough to get a warrant. You need more.
Yeah.
So in other words, you have the business connections, and now you have to get something else. And so you get a dossier together that has this something else, and that gets you the predicate to go in.
So the idea is, was the FISA warrant warranted? Did they base it off of the Steele dossier, which had false information?
Right.
And so both the FISA warrant and the Mueller report, that was an entire investigation that could have been spurred off of BS.
Well, yeah, and so there's two things to understand about this. Number one, there are two investigations into it, and one of them is a criminal investigation, and that was one of the reasons why Trump made the phone call. Trump said in his phone call to Zelensky, "Hey, we want to know what's going on in 2016. Where's some of this? So he
made the phone call to
Zelensky."
Gotcha.
And he's talking about so
Zelensky's the Ukrainian leader.
Right. Now, as we assume that whatever documents are over there, whatever they can get over there is going to feed these investigations. Now, the other thing, let me give you two narratives. One is actually innocent, and the other is very not innocent, but they're both bad. And let me give you the narratives. You got one of three choices here. These investigations are going to come back and say, look, nothing bad happened. This is unfounded.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one possibility. But another possibility is going to be something somewhat innocent. They're going to say, look, this was overactive policing. You have these. The CIA is set up purposely to oppose Russia, and the United States had this history where we're pointing a lot of missiles at each other, and then so you have to these national defense people. Maybe it was just an overreaction. In other words, they weren't trying to keep Trump from being in office. They weren't Democrats or Republicans. They're just trying to make sure America's safe. Okay, so you have that. The report comes out and say, look, that's all that this was. Well, but that's not what some of these Trumpian people are saying. They're going further. They're trying to say that this was a setup. They're trying to say that the CIA used this asset that they had to create a false predicate because they were career people protected. They had Democratic leadings. Comey and some of these FBI people didn't want Trump in there, didn't like Trump. And so that's what they're saying. They're bringing this big conspiracy narrative.
Yeah, they call it the deep state or something like that.
Yeah, that's what they call it. And in fact, on that issue, play clip 81.
That the FBI probe, he said, began with a lead from an obscure diplomat, not an official intelligence product from the so-called Five Eyes. That's the intelligence network that includes the U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK.
The entire investigation was opened based not on Five Eyes intelligence, but on a tip from a foreign politician. He's a Maltese diplomat who's widely portrayed as a Russian agent, but seems to have far more connections with Western governments, including our own FBI and our own State Department, than with Russia.
What is the Five Eyes?
Okay, so I'm not a big expert on this. I'll just do the best I can. These refer to Western governments that have their own CIAs, and they keep eyes on the bad guys, right? So you have this intelligence network. Okay, so the point is that this theory that Trump was compromised didn't come from them. It didn't come from any collective judgment or any of the sharing of information of the national defense intelligence agencies that belong to the allies. Instead, it came from this asset, strange asset. I don't know if I should call him an asset. He's actually I think they called him an obscure Maltese diplomat, Joseph Mifsud. Now, this guy shows up at times in very strange places. We wondered at one point whether he was a Russian agent. Now they're wondering whether he's a CIA agent. He seems to be used in various contexts in the past. And also, I read in the Washington Post the other day they can't find him. They're trying to.
He's a secret agent.
Well. Look. Pretty much, I'm out of information now on the show. But this is what's going on. You got an investigation into the investigation. It's cloak and dagger stuff. It involves it involves in its worst level. It's this crackpot theory. But also there are actual bona fide investigations into it, and we just have to watch and see how it turns out. This is one of the subplots for why Trump wanted information over there, and you can't look. if I have one complaint about anything, it's that you really can't get information that's not framed in some way. You know, when you watch the media, you get this one stream about what's going on and what the impeachment is about.
Yeah.
And then you have to dig. You have to be like your own Columbo or something. I don't know if you know who Columbo is.
Sherlock Holmes.
Right. You have to be your own to try to piece this together. And it's a really crazy story. I'm anxious to see how these reports come out.
So on one hand, you're saying, you know, what if this is just overactive police within this narrative? What if it's just a fake predicate? You know, the entire Steele dossier was based on something false. But then, what if it's the next step further? What if the conservative conspiracy theorists are right about the deep state, and because we do know that there's this guy Joseph Milford. I think that's how you say his name, right? That's the CIA asset. Now that's where it gets into like a action suspense movie.
Yeah, it is. And in fact, in many ways, this is one of those. You're going to wait for the movie. I always have difficulty watching these complex movies. You know, my daughter right now would be laughing at me because when we go into the movies and it's complex, I sometimes have to tap her and say, "What was this all about? I don't get it." You know, she has to keep me going.
Watching
in the movie.
The Bourne Identity.
Right, yeah. But anyway, look, I'm a lawyer. Well, I practice law. And so if somebody tells me that there's a warrant, the police can give probable cause many times when it's really not there, and it does happen. It's not like it's a violation of the law. It's easy to get these warrants. Now it's probably a lot harder to get a FISA warrant, but still, it's just a bigger scale. And I probably think that what might be here is very simply that career people were worried about Trump's business connections and wanted to know if there was more to the story there about him being president, you know, like what role Russia would have. I mean, and I think they probably cut some corners. I think they probably needed a predicate to make sure that things were safe. I think it's going to be that. I think that's a real positive. Someone who has always dealt with how these warrants are gotten and seeing how corners get cut, that seems to be the easiest frame for me to digest. It's not the radical ones that you're hearing from some corners of the
right
conservative area. But if we have any time left, if you want to hear one more from Rudy, 98 is the last one I have here, and you can hear he's got these very large theories.
Why was the early contents of the Steele dossier, which we know Hillary Clinton paid for, that started in Ukraine?
You're darn right it did. And one of the cases that was dismissed was the case on George Soros' company that was funding a lot of the false information that was produced in the Ukraine. I was investigating allegations that go back to November of last year, before Biden was even a candidate, of massive corruption that interfered with the information that I could have used to ward off the entire Mueller probe.
He was investigating allegations. So there's no true concrete things here, right? But why can't he show more of this if what he's saying has any merit?
Well, the one I say, I didn't even know if we should run this clip because there he is, introduces something else. He says that George Soros had a company in Ukraine, and then he says it was funding false things. I have to tell you, that is like, okay, so this is one of the things why Biden says, what are you listening to Rudy Hootie for? You know, I mean, this is like then every time he talks, I mean, the theories get more grand and more grand and more grand and more grand. One of the things we can hope for, and I do hope this happens, that these investigations continue to put these things down to earth. You'll notice that that's the way that happens. They tried to say Hillary violated the law. Comey came out and said, look, she really didn't, okay? No, she didn't violate the law. She got investigated and she was cleared. Mueller basically did the same thing. I mean, Trump did a couple of things that got close to obstruction with regard to someone's testimony, but really he didn't do anything. They had to stretch the obstruction laws, and obstruction is so vague. Both parties are trying to. So Mueller basically did his job. What I'm hoping is that these darn investigations keep concluding and say, look, there's not quit this. This is explainable. This is what happened. Your government's working. That's the way I hope they come out. But this is what we got to watch and see.
All right. Until next time, this is definitely an exciting development.
Yeah.
If you're listening on the air, make sure you catch us on YouTube or any of the other million sources that we have online.
Yeah.
Again, your only place for allegiance-free politics.
Exactly. Thank you, Adam.
Your only source for truly balanced politics. Broadcast from Wright State University, this is Good Politics with Dr. Sean Wilson and Adam Whiteman.